Hey there friends, it's Cassie and welcome back for another video here on my YouTube channel. Today we are making 5 cards out of the one kit from Brutus Monroe, and this one is called Homegrown Happiness. It is the Brutus Monroe Inspiration Box for March 2021, and as far as I know it is still available. So let's jump into card number 1. I have several masks I went ahead and stamped out using some masking paper, and I have a piece of alcohol perfect cardstock that I have cut down to 4 1/4 inches by 5 1/2 inches. So it's the full front of an A2 size card. I'm going to stamp down this one flower and mask it. And so then I'll just move my paper from side to side, kind of turn the flower just a little bit to get some variation in how that flower is going to look. Ink it up again, and I'm using some Raven Detail ink for that because I do plan to do some alcohol marker coloring. I'll peel off the backing paper from my mask, and I'll have everything linked down below that I'm using. But I'll cover this flower with the mask, and as I stamp, I'll cover with the mask. And you might be wondering why I do that with all of them. Well, you'll see at the end here. Stamping again, and then covering that again with a mask. As you can see, I've used these masks once before already, and it actually did it on the back of this paper. I screwed it up, and this is why I suggest stamp and mask right away, because I didn't do that with one of them, and then I thought there was a mask there, and I went ahead and I stamped right over the top. So I had to start all over, which wasn't that big of a deal, but definitely be aware of what you're doing. So I'll cover this one with this mask after I peel off the release paper. And I didn't have the full part of that mask, which was fine because I knew this was going to stick off the edge just a little bit. But there was a small portion, so I'm just going to peel that off and make sure that I cover that part of the flower. And then I will stamp my last part, which is just that one flower. So now I've got those flowers going all the way across this piece of cardstock in a horizontal fashion. Cover that last one with a mask, and then we are going to pull out some Simon Hurley Create Remember Me ink. I'm going to blend that on, starting on that masking paper and blending up. So it'll just kind of fade out as I go up. And if you start on the masking paper, then it's not really dark, and it works really well. So starting again, then I'll do that on the bottom. This is almost a 1-layer card. I do that every time because I like to start with a panel and then see where I can go from there. And now I'll wipe up my mess, and I'll peel each one of those masks away. I'll only keep, I think I keep maybe 2 or 3 of them because they are still very good masks, but I don't need all 5. And so I'll just keep a couple, and to keep that I just stick those right on top of my stamp set. And then I'll have them if I need them again. And it's neat as you reveal, that's why I'm keeping this part in there, to see those bright white flowers in the background. It's so cool. So now we're going to bring in our Copic markers. I've got some R02 and I believe that's R05. I could be wrong. But I am going to put down a wash of my lightest color first. And I definitely need a refill on this one. But I am going to put down a wash of that R02 for several of those flowers. And then I'll come back in with my darker color. And then I'm going to do a flicking motion from the center out, just kind of putting some shadowing where I think there might be shadowing. And then I'll come back over the top of that with my R02 and just blend that out a little bit. And then there's our last one, our last couple flowers that we're working on. I just love how that looks. It's so neat how you've got those flowers all on a panel. I'm going to come in with some brown, bring in a little bit darker brown, just to add some shadowing there, and that's going to do it for our coloring. Now I'm going to stamp my sentiment on there. It just says with deepest sympathy. And we're going to put this in our splatter box, and I'm going to splatter some penny aqua pigment all over that background. It is a beautiful shimmery aqua pigment. And so again, I'll have that linked down below. But look at how shiny and shimmery that is. So, so pretty. All right, now once it's dry, we're going to get ready to just go ahead and glue this down to our card panel, or our card base, I mean, with some liquid glue. And that's going to take up the full front of that card. And that is going to do it for card number 1. Very happy with how that one turned out. For card number 2, we are going to pull out the acetate that came in the kit along with the Stonewashed alcohol ink. we are going to use these two together because alcohol inks work beautifully on non-porous surfaces. They really won't work on paper that is porous, so you definitely need a non-porous surface. I highly recommend doing this in a well-ventilated area, and I am using an alcohol ink blower. You could, I suppose, use a straw. I actually don't recommend it because I'm not sure how that affects respiratory issues. This is why I use the alcohol ink blower. I also have a marker spritzer that I have used in the past, so if you've been stamping for a while, you may have one of those in your stash, so you could pull something like that out. But all I'm doing is putting that like drops here and there and moving it around. You'll notice that it gives this beautiful texture, and I tend to like to go in areas that are starting to dry, and then I'll put a little bit of a drop down, blow that ink around, and you'll notice that it'll move the ink around it away, and it'll give these beautiful harsh edges and almost looks like cells. It's just such a cool background. It makes it look kind of wispy, cloudy, and it's really neat. And I'm doing it on the white cardstock. I've got that as a background so you can see what I'm doing, and so I can see what I'm doing. But this is on some clear acetate, so just any non-porous surface will work really well. And then once I'm happy with how that is, I'm going to set that off to the side to dry, and I will then move on to my next step. But I love how that looks. It's just such a cool look. And it looks neat, transparent, but I'll set that off to the side to dry. I'd already stamped out my images using some Raven Detail ink, and now I'm going to ink blend over the top of those. This is just a very quick way to add some color to an image. I'm using my mini Ergo blending brush, and I'm brushing, that first color was some Minty Fresh, and then I'll clean off my brush in between, and I'm going to do the flower. We're going to use some Over the Moon to start. I'll put that down as a nice little wash all around it. And then my next color will be Guppy. I'm going to put that sort of in the center of my flower just to add some variation in the color. And then I'll add some later Gator to my stem. And once I'm happy with that, clean off my brush, put that away, and then I am going to use the die cut on the jar, but I'm going to fussy cut my flower and fussy cut my stem. And that's actually just really pretty easy. I know a lot of you are just cringing right now because you hate fussy cutting, but it really didn't take a lot of effort. And then I'll run my jar through my die cutting machine. And then there's another little piece to the jar. I'm going to use that to cut out the top part. So that way I can layer in my flower, and you'll see what I'm talking about here when we go to put it together. So I'll run this through the die cutting machine. It's going to cut out an oval for the top, but I'm going to keep both the pieces. And then before I attach any of that, I'm going to attach my acetate down. What I'm using here is actually some vellum tape by Doris. I believe that's vellum tape. Regardless, I will have it linked down below. I got this from the Brutus Monroe store, and it works really well for trying to attach down clear things. So you can see it there, and you can kind of see it if you're paying attention to it, but once I put it down, if you're not really paying attention to it, you don't see it really. So now we're going to take a little bit of washi tape. I've put my stem through that opening at the top of the jar. I'm just going to use that washi tape to attach it down, and another little piece of washi tape to attach the oval back down. So then it'll just look like the stem is sticking inside the jar. I'll use some liquid glue to adhere this down to the front of my card panel. And then I'll take some foam tape, Brutus Monroe foam tape behind the flower, peel off that release paper, and then we will stick that down. So that'll give a little bit of dimension. My sentiment is going to come from the sentiment strips that came in this kit. Y'all know how I love those sentiment strips. And I'm just going to trim these down using my Guillotine trimmer. And then I'll use another piece of foam tape behind the sentiment. And I'll peel off that release paper. We'll line that up on our glass mat and stick that down. And then I will attach this down to a card base that was already ready to go, just using some more liquid glue. And once that's on there, that's going to finish off card number 2. I love working with alcohol inks. If that's something you're interested in, head back to my channel. I have several videos on that as well. For card number 3, I took one of the foilable panels, went ahead and colored that off screen just using my Copic markers, and I did trim the panel down just a little bit. I'm going to take some of the copper glitter stock that came in the kit, and I'm going to trim down a panel that's going to be the full front of an A2 size card, card, which measures 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inches. And then I'm going to pull out the ribbon. I'm going to take some of that taupe ribbon and cut down just enough that will wrap around the front of my card base, or my card panel. Just a small portion of it. I'll trim that down, put that ribbon away, and then I'm going to take some score tape actually and just attach it to the back. So just little chunks of score tape that I've got, and I'm just wrapping that around the front, and then I will adhere it to the back. And then I'm going to go ahead and adhere this down to that glitter stock using some liquid glue. You'd want a nice strong adhesive if you're adhering this to glitter stock, because if you try to use tape runner, it's probably not going to be super successful. Score tape would work, but definitely liquid glue. So I'm peeling off the back of that score tape as well. I'm going to stick that down to that glitter stock, so I'll have a nice border of that beautiful copper glitter stock. And if I'd been thinking, I probably would have splattered some more of my penny Aqua pigment on the front of this, but I just wasn't thinking. So I'll adhere this down to a pre-made card base. And then my sentiment comes from the sentiment strips again. This one just says happy birthday. You can never have enough birthday cards, right? So I'll attach down the sentiment using some more of that liquid glue, and that's going to finish off card number 3. Very super simple, easy one. For card number 4, we're going to actually foil one of those foilables that came in the kit. So I've pulled out some spring green deco foil, and I'm going to trim this down. We're going to use our Spellbinders quick trimmer. This was a gift to me from my sweet friend Kim, and this is amazing. I like to not like chop at my foil, and you can't really run it through your paper cutter very easily, so this is just a perfect solution. I'll just line that up on that self-healing mat, and there are little grid lines, pardon my head, little grid lines with grooves in them, so you can cut through that, and it just cuts perfectly. And it's nice and straight, which I love. So then I'll cut off this excess, and that little excess piece is going to be for one of the foilable sentiment strips that I'm going to cut down. It'll fit perfectly on there. And so I do need to color that one flower, but I wanted to show you how I did it. I colored them all the same with that green Copic in the center, using that darker red, and I used these reds earlier. And then I will blend that out with that lighter color, but that's how I took care of all of them. And then once I'm done with that, I'm going to pull out the plastic sandwich piece that comes with my MINC machine. So I use a MINC machine to foil, and I put 2 pieces of white copy paper in there that just cuts down on the static electricity. And I like to put them face down. That helps also with the static electricity. And so that's what I'm doing here, just putting those face down inside that sandwich. And if you like to foil at all, a MINC machine is a wonderful investment. If it's something that you plan to do a lot of, or you just really like it, I definitely suggest trying to find a MINC because I love it. And so I'll just run that through my MINC machine. You only have to do it once. And I didn't even sweep it off, but it always does a beautiful job of foiling. Check that out. And I'll keep that excess piece there because I can reuse that later. And then I'll peel off on my sentiment strip and take a look at that. It did a beautiful job of foiling that as well. All right, so now we're going to start doing some assembly. I pulled out the sequins that came in the kit. I just thought that those would go so perfectly in the centers of those flowers. So I'm going to line all of those up, pulling out the matching colors. There's about three maybe total colors of different colored sequins in this pack, and there are so many sequins in there. You'll have sequins for days. Lots of shaker possibilities and embellishment. I'm going to put some foam tape behind my sentiment strip, and then I'm going to attach that down to the front of my card panel. And when that is on there, we're now going to attach it down to another card base that I had all ready to go. Just using some more liquid glue. And then when that's on there, that's going to finish off card number 4. I think that is so pretty with that foiling, just holding it up in the light like that. Just makes me so happy. For our 5th and final card for today, I had gone ahead and stamped out all of those flowers using the various colored cardstocks that came in the kit, and then I did a little bit of Copic coloring just to accent, add a little bit of shadowing to those as I'm showing you here. And then I did fussy cut out all of those images. I went ahead and stamped all the leaves using that navy blue, and I know for some of you that's going to be a little bit different, like maybe not into it, but I like to look for the colors, you know, different colors in all the things, and there aren't always all dark green or light green leaves. Sometimes, I mean, if you think about eucalyptus, that stuff's almost like a blue, so I'm going to go with it. All right, so now I'm just arranging it onto one of those foilables, all those different leaves that I cut out, and then I'm going to start gluing everything down, just using that same liquid glue that I've been using the whole time. I had originally cut out the top part, but I'm just going to glue that down. I decided I wanted it to look like those stems were being seen through the glass, so I'm just going to go ahead and put those right on top of our mason jar. Just glue those right down. And I only did 3 of those, didn't want to overpower the jar. And then I'm going to arrange my flowers all around there, just kind of tucking some of them in, trying to make something that's pleasing to the eye. I love that this color palette of cardstock in there was like light yellow, darker yellow, some pink, that light blue, and that navy blue. It's actually a very beautiful color combination. So I was very, very inspired by that. And I thought it would be very fun. And also then it does cut down on if you need to make quicker cards. This is something, rather than having to color all of that, the color's already done for you basically, and you just add some accents. So I'm going to glue those little leaves around the little pieces, kind of tucking those in. And I'm really loving how this is coming together, looking like this really beautiful bouquet that didn't take a lot of effort. And then I'll put my last one in there. And then I'm going to trim this down just a little bit, and I also trimmed down some more of that pink cardstock. I'm going to have that be an accent. And I cut down some ribbon. I'm going to do the same thing to this ribbon that I did earlier with the other ribbon. Just glue that or tack that down with a little bit of score tape. And then I'm going to glue this down to the front of that pink card panel. After I put my sentiment on there, so I'll glue the sentiment on there as well. That one again comes from the sentiment strips, although this stamp set has some really great sentiments in it. As far as I know, there aren't too many of these pieces available separately, so if you are interested at all in this kit, I highly suggest you go check it out. It is very worth the price. The stamp set alone comes close to meeting the price, so definitely check it out. And it is linked down below. Let's go ahead and take a look at all the cards that I made today. I would love to know what you think. If you had a favorite, leave that down in the comment section. I love reading that. I love hearing which ones you guys like. And if you liked this video, hit that like button and consider subscribing if you haven't already done so. And a huge thank you to all the love and support that you guys give. You guys are incredible, and I do appreciate you guys. So thank you so much, and I will see you very soon in another video. Bye, everybody.